G'day, Matt Tanttari, sitting up there, and I don't know what the hell that is, makeshift in Lismore.
You are looking at right now the top story of our Lismore business that was underwater about just over a week ago.
So you're sort of sitting in the roof. I can see the rafters and I can see the stuff that you put underneath the tiles, or the roof at least, on top of the roof. So you're sort of camping up there. Is that your office or your home?
It is. This is our office, actually, usually. What you can't smell, Mark, is the mould.
Everyone keeps talking about the smell. What is that smell? What are we talking about here?
My wife informs me that it's black mould, which is basically not good. So that's the smell. It's also the streets, sewage, and just, gas, fuel, whatever has come out of industrial warehouses. That's the smell.
But it's a black mold. So is the mold visible in all the various premises? Because if it is, I mean, that's a mission trying to get rid of that stuff. It's quite dangerous.
Yeah, so the mold comes in all sorts of colours: green, white, black. I don't know what they all mean, but they're not healthy, and there's people getting rid of it. I think ceilings are getting stripped out, and just to get rid of it quickly. So there's clove oil, I think, fixes everything.
Everywhere here in Sydney, we saw the event, and and the event was played over and over and over again. The floods, and we saw cars floating down the road, and caravans and houses and rooftops, and then what actually inevitably happens in these situations is the same thing happened in the bushfires. Is the majority of the population of the country forgets about after that, and it's really what happens after the event. So the event lasts for a couple of days, and now where we are is where you are right now. You've got mold issues, you've got cleanup issues, you've got sewage issues, you've got blah, blah, blah. Take me through that stuff. What are we talking about here? Now, you're living upstairs, or your office is now up in the roof of your building, the roof cavity. Take me through what are the after effects of all this?
Well, I'm walking through it now really firsthand for the first time. 5 years ago, when there was last a flood, we didn't own businesses. Luckily for us, there's the one here in Lismore, and then we also have two buildings flooded in Ballina, which is down on the coast. That it can be insured for flood. This one here isn't. So people's insurance policy is generally getting it upstairs. Every single building in the city here has an upstairs level where you put your business stuff, inventory and stock. You put it upstairs to keep it safe. That's your insurance policy. So I think that my days have been now filled with yesterday, probably about 3 or 4 hours with different insurance assessors down in Ballina, in our Ballina buildings. Here in Lismore, it's a little bit not like that. We can get stormwater insurance. There's a lot of people that don't have that in homes. Businesses, it depends whether they're a part of a larger chain that has like a mutual covering their building. But for this business here, it does not have flood insurance. So it looks like lots of creative ways of either rebuilding or moving, basically.
The rebuild, a lot of times, is dependent on the amount of capital you have available to you, the cash you got available to you, and that comes from either your balance sheet, which you don't really want to have to touch, or alternatively comes from your insurance policy. That's sort of brain damage stuff, sort of navigating your way through it, not only navigating with the insurance company, but I'm trying to understand, are you going to get enough? Because I remember when the bushfires are on, and when you had to rebuild to a different standard. So what you lost might have been something that was built 20, 30 years ago. Today, the building code changes to take account of things like bushfires and floods, etc. And it's much more expensive to rebuild. So whatever you were insured for usually is not enough to insure you, pay for what you got to do. Apart from the fact you've got to try and get tradespeople, I should say, and or timber or plaster or whatever it is, which there will be a shortage up there for sure. What is the general mood of those people who are even lucky enough to have had some insurance? What's the general mood of everybody up there? Or is there a positive mood, or is it like extraordinarily down?
I think for us, we can see the opportunity in it all. You're right about when you build back in this kind of situation, we would never build back the business that we had. If we did, I think we'd be foolish to. And if people build back in the city the way that they were, I think that would be foolish as well. So in the instance of this business, in the building where we're sitting, it was an indoor kids play centre and cafe, had about 120 seats, had play equipment that was scaffolding basically. Building back in this situation looks like bump in, bump out style coffee carts. It looks like portable play equipment that isn't bolted into the ground, and it looks like carpet tiles. So answering your question, you can actually build back in a flood zone if the building's up to scratch, and you're just building back a business. It shouldn't necessarily cost as much, or it should be. You can do it. You can do it. But the mood, that's another question. And some people are kind of, have been ramping up. For us in Ballina, our two operations in downtown Ballina, we're actually going to consolidate the two businesses into the one venue. And so in that situation, we're consolidating, but it actually propels us forward. In Lismore, we would move to a portable bump in, bump out situation so that if a flood ever threatened again, all of our stock, basically everything will be out of the CBD. That's our strategy.
I'm not sure, but are you a good proxy for the way everybody else feels?
Some people are very positive. I've just gone track through friends, and I think it's 50-50. There will, of course, be people that won't return to Lismore. I think there's people like mechanics that can move to a mobile mechanic situation. It's a bigger question. It's actually a government policy question about whether they spend the money and help rebuild the CBD, or do they move, they create a new green city somewhere in the hills for northern New South Wales, which would be, in the long term, a lot more certain, and, you can create new opportunities. I think that's the way forward. But I'm positive either way. We're just going to make it work. And because this is probably 20% of what we do is our Lismore situation, I feel like it hasn't hit me as hard, potentially, as other people.
Well, I'm lucky in my business too, because we lend money around the area, Ballina, Lismore, Mullumbimby, and right up to Tweed, etc. But it's not a big percentage of our total business. But I do feel very much for the individuals who run those parts of our businesses up there. I'm lucky in that regard, but I don't see for a long time I don't see a lot of applications for home loans, particularly to buy property up there from new buyers or new entrants into the Northern Rivers market for a long time. As I said, I'm lucky because it only represents a small percentage of my total business. But then I had the same issue when the South Coast bushfires were on a couple of years ago. Just lucky. So therefore my mood's okay. But I just don't know what it does for people who are have their business completely devastated, have no insurance, have no faith in the government, perhaps are living rough at the moment, on someone's lounge or as the case may be. Where do those people does the local community give them support? I mean, are you guys up there in the Northern Rivers forming support groups to help out these people? I know the government's announced all this money for psychological help and etc. But look, how do you know how to contact someone to get that sort of help? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to turn to Matt, or you're going to turn to your friend next door, or a bloke around the corner, or the lady around the next door, and you want to sit down and talk to them and have someone direct you to a group of people who are like-minded and have felt the same thing. Is that stuff going on up there?
Yeah, 100%. And just before we jumped on, I had one of my staff members down in Ballina. Her house got flooded, and even her, who's connected, their family earn decent wages. They're out of their place. And there was just a bit of despair really on the phone. What we're doing in Ballina, the community is working together. So part of what I do is a thing called the Community Project, which is really food banks that we operate in the region, which is what we did before the floods anyway. So for us, we basically, when we saw that this business had flooded, we basically, in my mind, I came over it on a boat last week when we were out on the water, and So I knew it was basically gone. So I just went, okay, what else? Yeah, I've got to focus on our other stuff. And so we got one of our food banks flooded, so we got that moved to higher ground real quick with about help of 50 volunteers. People are lifting, so there's funding coming through. I'll give you an example. There's a young couple, south side of Lismore, lost their house, and he also lost his work truck for his growing construction company. So he's lost all his tools and he's lost his house for the meantime. So in his case, there'll be obviously things like GoFundMe's. That will be, honestly, it's rough, but it'll get some people through. And these people here are super resourceful, and they will find gaps, loopholes. They'll show initiative, and they'll get things going again. I hope that everyone builds back in a more sustainable way in the city here, and just plans ahead. And then again, I don't think that was 2 meters higher than what has ever happened. So I'm sitting in a loft that was flooded, where this in history has never happened. So communities lifting, government probably, whether they come to the party when it comes to funding businesses and households even more, I'm not sure. But I think the government's real role is good policy, and I'm hoping that good policy looks like CBDs turned into beautiful parklands and sporting fields, and a new CBD city built on higher ground.
Well, Matt, we need people with your sort of attitude, and perhaps your more importantly, your outlook. I mean, you're taking a positive view, and some people taking lots of negative views at the government. It's easy to have a crack at the government, and governments rarely work quickly, and they rarely work in lockstep with the community. And I'm not here to say that the community should be doing the government's job, but equally the government can't do the community's job. The community has a job, and the government has a job too. They have to work together. But that's sort of in the wish list, and I don't think the government will for a long time. They haven't worked out how that works at this stage, particularly when it's more remote, like Lismore. It might work when it's west of Sydney or something, but it's a little bit more remote, and it's just a bit harder for them to get there. No matter what the government does, they're going to get the blame for going up there. I mean, I don't feel sorry for them, but at the same time, I don't envy them. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes ever. But Matt, I really appreciate what you're doing and speaking to me today, but what you're doing for your community, but most importantly, what you are, how you're keeping it together. That's so important, just holding it together like the way you're doing it. And I'm going to be up there Friday, and I'll be in Lismore. So if I get a chance, I'm going to come and say hello to you. And I hope there's somewhere up there I can have a cup of tea, or alternatively, I'm going to have to bring myself a thermos, and I'll make sure that there's 2 cups of tea in there for one for each of us. And I might even bring a paper cup for you. So I'm even happy to share the cup on the thermos, mate. But I hope to see you next Friday, this Friday, I should say, if possible. And just keep up the positive attitude, dude. So Matt, well done, mate. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me, especially time out of your job whilst you're putting everything back together again.